The Bible tells of a future prophetic event when all of Israel will be saved by Jesus at the end of the last days. In fact, the reason that Christ has not come back yet is that he is awaiting an appointed time when nations will rise up and attack the Israel. When you look at the current state of affairs in the Middle East today, the arrival of our Lord is closer than ever. How do we know that Jesus comes to save Israel? The Bible tells us explicitly. Zechariah 12 verse 10 says this, "And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son, who in history has been pierced." This is a clear reference to Jesus. This happens when Jerusalem becomes a heavy stone to all nations of the earth. Well, that is certainly true. What is going on in the Middle East today is a powder keg. Israel is surrounded by enemies that want nothing less than its total annihilation. Very soon in the near future, a group of nations will attack Israel. They will be on the brink of victory. But then Jesus will come to save Israel. What happens then? Zechariah 13 tells us that once the Jews finally accept Jesus as their Messiah, that a well will be opened on the house of David to cleanse them of sin and impurity. Amazingly, even at the coming of Christ, many in Israel will reject him. 2/3 of the land of Israel will be cut off from the Lord and perish. The 1/3 remaining will be passed through the fire and refined, tested. They will call on his name, and he will answer saying, "These are my people." While these events potentially could be the war of Gog and Magog, we don't believe that it is for a number of significant reasons. This is great news for Christians because it means that the second coming of Jesus is much closer than we thought too. In the war of Gog and Magog, Israel are at peace. Peace doesn't look likely in the Middle East anytime soon. But the prophecy in Zechariah does not teach that Israel will be at peace when her enemies attack. The city of Jerusalem will cause all the surrounding nations to stagger. This doesn't resemble a time of peace. Jerusalem will also be a very heavy stone to all people from all nations. Again, if Israel was at peace during this coming war, then how could it be considered a heavy burden to all nations? Also, the words of Jesus refutes the idea that the world will be peaceful upon his arrival. Every Christian knows that just before it is coming, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There are food shortages and pestilences just before it is coming. This does not resemble the time just before the war of Gog and Magog. The war of Gog and Magog, in our opinion, is the war after Christ's millennial reign. Revelation 27 verse 8 says this, "When the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison and will go out to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, and to gather them for battle. In number they are like the sand on the seashore." To us, this makes more sense. Israel will definitely be in a time of peace when this war happens, unlike today, which is a time of worldwide turbulence. Another very important factor in why Zechariah 12 probably is not referring to the Gog and Magog war is because we believe that Zechariah 14 does instead. Zechariah 14 verse 2 practically mirrors Revelation 20 verse 8 and 7. Both Satan and God gather the nations together for the final war, the one in which the question of sovereignty will be fully answered. Finally, when we look at Zechariah 14 verse 9, it says this, "The Lord will be king over the whole earth. On that day there will be one Lord, and his name the only name." You see, at the second coming of Jesus, only Israel is mentioned as having Jesus as king. He rules the earth for 1,000 years, but clearly nations are still in opposition to him during that time. Then, at the end of the millennial reign, Jesus hands that kingdom back to his Father, as 1 Corinthians 15 verse 28 tells us. It says, "When he has done this, then the Son himself will be made subject to him who put everything under him, so that God may be all in all." In that way, God the Father receives his kingdom back from Jesus, and it is Jehovah God who is the one to destroy Satan and his army, throwing him into the lake of fire and brimstone. What does all of this mean for Christians? Well, it's great news. The headlines all around the world are focused on Israel and the Middle East region in general. Prophecy is aligning perfectly with the state of the world that is described just before his coming. As Christians, we can look forward to the second coming of Jesus with great anticipation. Now more than ever, we need to reject Satan's world and align ourselves with the true King, Jesus Christ.